I'm Brittany, this is Chuaning, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch and read gay things. We're finishing Volume 8 of Erha today. I am so sorry for the late start. We had some technical difficulties in the book chat before this stream that pushed things back a little bit. So we're running a little bit late, but it's fine because we finish a volume. Let me scoot into you guys. We finished a volume today, and this volume has been really like nice, light, and fluffy. So who knows? Maybe they'll get serious by the end of it. We are on page 267 for chapter 266 as I drop the bookmark, which is called To Warm You Up. There's a poll about that in the field right now. We'll check back in and see what those results are because I only put it up a few minutes ago. We read for a couple of hours. We take a break around halfway through. We usually get through 40 to 50 pages, and today I believe is more around 50 pages. Unless I'm misremembering or miscalculating, both are possible. And there are trigger warnings available down in the description box, general trigger warnings for the series, should you need to use them. There's also an evergreen link down in the description to the public version of the Gaywatch Discord that has all of the queer bookish chats that you could ever possibly hope to have. And, you know, that might be it. So, last we left off, Morun had to shatter his core, and two Shimei are in cahoots. That's what you missed on Erha. At the foot of Mount Jiao, hidden behind dense vines, a remote footpath wound its way up to Qingtong Palace, used by the Nangong clan when they came to the mountain to pay their respects to their dead. The palace was small, but its paths were rambling, and the garden was filled with dragon blood flowers that glowed softly in the dark. Their bloom season had already passed, and only a scattered few retained their petals. From a distance, they looked like shattered stars bejeweling the velvet black of night. Shimei strode into the depths of the garden, where a natural hot spring was nestled in the landscape. He disrobed, his bare feet pale as jade, as he padded to the water's edge and looked down at his reflection. The waters were hot, but his gaze was frigid. He reached a hand up to touch his chest. A large swath of flesh there had festered as a result of backlash from the forbidden technique. But now he could stop worrying. All was going according to plan, and soon everything would get better. What the fuck does that mean? Hang on. Everything would get better? Presumably for him, and literally no one else. Because heaven forbid we take anyone other than ourselves into account, thank you. Everything, I'm writing this down, everything would be better? That's terrifying. He stepped into the water. The hot springs of Mount Jiao were imbued with the energy from the demon dragon, and bathing in them was spiritually nourishing. Shimei leaned against the wall of the pool and closed his eyes. A rustling emanated from somewhere nearby. Eyes closed, Shimei called, "Who is it?" Nangong Lu popped out of the shrubbery with a dragon blood flower tucked behind one ear. At the sight of Shimei, he smiled in delight. "Dear friend Gaga, are you taking a bath? Can I help you at all?" "No," Shimei said. Nangong Lu scratched his head. Then I'm going to leave. I'm going now. Otherwise, if you're naked and I'm not, it's not fair." Through the curling mist, Shimei laughed. Deep within the springs, his face gleamed like the first sheen of ice in a Jiangnan winter, shining, fragile, and freezing cold. Those peach-blossomed eyes fluttered open as he gave Nangong Lu a smile that was not a smile. "How so?" "Because you're beautiful," came the frank reply. "Oh. Does a little boy like you already know so much about beauty?" "I'm 5, huffed Nangong Lu. "I'm not little." Amused, Shimei's smile deepened. "Okay, Gogo was wrong. Come here, let me ask you a question. Between myself and Taishan-jin, who do you prefer? Dear friend Gaga, of course, Nangang Lu said instantly. Who is Taishan-jun? I don't know anyone with that name. Let me put it another way. Me and Moran. He greeted you before. You remember him, don't you? Sucking his thumb, Nangang Lu gave the question serious thought and nodded. Whose face do you like better? Don't decide based on who you've known longer. I just want to know who you think looks best. Mirror, mirror on the wall, I'm going to ask a 5-year-old to validate my insecurities? Woo. Shimei, I'm going to need you to stand up, all right? This is a little pathetic, okay? Also, man, get a hobby. You're fixated. This time, Nangang Lu couldn't give an instant reply. After more thought, he announced, I still think dear friend Gaga is the best. This seemed to satisfy Shimei. Oh? Tell me, what's wrong with him? I don't know. Then why do you like me better? Nangang Lu seemed hurt. I don't know either. I just think you're prettier. Shimei sank into thought. After a moment, he rose from the water and leaned against the edge where the mist was thin, revealing the graceful lines of his back. Come here, he said with a smile, waving Nangang Lu over with a dripping hand. When he deemed Nangang Lu close enough, he straightened up, rising from the water. Shimei laughed. What's all the fuss? We're both men. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Don't ask him who's bigger. Don't ask him who's bigger. Don't ask him who's bigger. Come on now. Also, yes, thank you. Gonna echo chat sentiment. He has the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. Nangang Lu scrubbed at his face. Not, he mumbled. You got water in my eyes. Shimei didn't care about his eyes. He grabbed Nangang Lu by the wrist and forced him to look at his body, bearing that frightful wound on his chest. Look at this. Are you afraid? That wound had festered badly and oozed pus. Nangang Lu scarcely glanced at it before turning away in disgust. Yuck, he said, with the frank candor of children. Do you still think I'm pretty? Shimei was still smiling, but his eyes were cold. If I'm not mistaken, this heinous, ugly part of you was entirely your doing. It is just a product of everything that's wrong with you. But now we're going to this is in really bizarre and creepy waters. No pun intended. Rather than answer, Nangang Lu tried to struggle out of Shimei's grasp, but Shimei was strong. There was nothing he could do. Eventually, he teared up, voice quavering with fear. Let go of me. I don't like this. Take a good look. I don't want to. Crack. Shimei's iron grip had dislocated Nangang Lu's wrist. Shimei's eyes flashed with resentment and dissatisfaction. Didn't you just say I was pretty? He asked, a manic light flashing in his eyes. What? One little wound changes everything? Yeah, it's just this one wound. That's the only thing wrong with you, Shimei. And even then, it's not even wrong with you. There are perfectionists. And then there's the water bitch. No. Does the slightest imperfection make beauty revolting? Shimei pressed closer, turn affection into disgust, longing into irritation. No, this is a you problem. Nangong Lu couldn't help it. He burst into tears. I don't get it. I don't get it. Let go of me. I want to go. His fussing worsened Shimei's poor mood. Storm clouds gathered in his eyes. He drew his hand back and slapped Nangong Lu across the face. Imbecile. Get out. He's You know what? He said coldly, finally releasing his grip on Nangong Lu's wrist. Once the sounds of Nangong Lu's sobbing faded into the distance, Shimei slunk back into the depths of the springs. His surroundings remained gorgeous, and the fragrance of dragonblood flowers in bloom yet filled the air. But his initial satisfaction had evaporated. In his heart was only fury. Endless fury. Just hearkening back to that crazy-ass theory that there's somehow a flower in Shimei. He punched the water's surface. After a great splash, the wave subsided, the ripples smoothing out to again show that reflection. Still surpassingly soft and lovely, with a rotting wound over his heart. Confusion and helplessness welled up to join Shimei's wrath. Leaning against the side of the pool, he tipped his head back and gazed into the sky. Everyone changes, he mumbled. Just as seeds sprout and new buds swell, just as flowers unfurl their petals amidst green leaves to bloom, then die, then crumble into mud. Time's passage was marked by the change it wrought. Some would see their teeth sharpened, while others had their edges worn away. Everything changes. He wearily cupped a handful of water and rinsed his face. Comparing his past and present lives made the changes stark, but when did he step onto that dark road? When did the change become irreversible? I'm just saying. After dressing in a fresh bathrobe, Shimei bound up his inky hair and took that fragrant path back to the secret chamber on Mount Jiao. He stood at the door for a moment before pushing it open. It was the dead of night. The lamps in the room had been snuffed out, leaving a single candle burning behind the gauze bed canopy. Shimei slipped silently into the room. All that marked his presence was the faint scent of soap from his bath, yet this was enough to wake the man behind the curtains. Taishanju's voice, rough with sleep, rang out. Who's there? It's me, Shimei replied with displeasure. There was a short silence, then the sound of robes rustling as someone turned over on the bed. How refined you are, master, Taishanjun sneered. Eavesdropping in this venerable one's bedroom in the small hours of the morning. He paused deliberately. Not getting all hot and bothered, are you? Shimei's expression worsened. You should learn to control yourself. None of us will have any fun if he winds up dead. It's the phrasing. Fun. Phrasing. There was a faint hint of exhaustion audible in Taishanjun's smug tone. Master needn't worry. This venerable one doesn't have any strange kinks in bed. I prefer to keep things simple. No rambling snakes or blindfolded riddle games. No one's dying here. Says the dead man. Rambling snakes, blindfolded riddle games. Even an imbecile would understand whom he was talking about. Furious, Shimei flung the canopy aside as one might unsheath a sword, ready to send sparks flying. Shiming Jing's gentle visage came face to face with Taishanjun's handsome mien. You? He froze before finishing his thought. He'd assumed Taishanjun and Chu Wanning's long-awaited reunion would have culminated in debauchery, but upon drawing the canopy aside, what he saw was quite different. Chu Wanning was sound asleep, cheeks flushed with fever. Taishanjun lay beside him with his robes open, revealing a broad swath of pale chest. He held Chu Wanning in his arms, face gloomy as he stroked his hair. He looked simultaneously disdainful yet defiant, as if he'd never let go of the man in his embrace. I realize the bar is in hell, but that's still a good sign. What are you doing? Asked Chimay. What do you think this venerable one might be doing? Taishanjun shot back with utmost scorn. Forget it. Why argue with a corpse? Chimay closed his eyes, forcing himself to calm, but a tiny flame of fury still burned in his chest. He couldn't put it out. Really? The water bitch couldn't put out the fire? That's sad. A retort slipped from his lips. I hadn't expected Emperor Taishanjun would still need his teacher's presence to sleep, even at his mature age. If you're not afraid of the dark, could it be that you missed being teacher's little pet? Shimay's jibe had the intended effect. Taishanjun's eyes narrowed dangerously. He unconsciously moved to push the sleeping Chu Wanning aside, or perhaps even kick him off the bed. That would certainly make him look more imposing. But as he watched Chimay approach, he instead clutched the man in his arms tighter, sleeves flaring as he swept a hand over to cover Chu Wanning's face. He looked up, displeased. What this venerable one does is no concern of yours. Watch your mouth. Chimay ground his teeth. Don't forget who made you. Hanlon the Sage uses this fact to threaten this venerable one nearly once a day, said Taishanjun icily. I'm shaking in my boots. How dare... After so many snide comments, Chimay lost his patience. He jabbed at Taishanjun's forehead and pushed in a thread of spiritual energy. Gather soul. The words of the incantation dropped from his sensuous lips, but Taishanjun's gaze remained determined and furious on him for a long time. So long that Chimay shuddered, feeling as if the man would finally escape his control. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he and Taishanjun clashed in a silent battle of wills. Using nearly all the spiritual energy he possessed, Chimay shouted again, Gather soul! This time, Taishanjun flinched. His eyes lost focus. Panting, Chimay retracted his spiritual energy, clutching his aching chest as his vision went dark. Both his spiritual core and spiritual energy were weak due to his natural constitution. Regardless of how assiduously he cultivated, he was no match for a cultivator like Taishanjun. When it came to medicines, he was a force to be reckoned with, but as soon as spiritual energy was required, he could barely hold his own. Chimay closed his eyes in rest for several moments before he turned back to Taishanjun. I'll ask you once more. What were you doing? Subdued, Taishanjun replied without inflection. He has a fever. He's cold. So? This puppet, who possessed only the cognizant soul from its previous lifetime, answered blandly, In this venerable one's arms he'll be warmer. Chimay stared at him. Warmer? His pale lips twitched, and he burst out laughing, though his peach blossom eyes held no mirth at all. Moran, are you mad? Feel the temperature of your skin. What do you think you are? You're cold as ice all over. You're dead. You have no heart or lungs or warmth. You yourself are freezing cold. How do you intend to warm him up? Pain seemed to flash in Taishanjun's hollow eyes, but it was a flicker only. He was merely a corpse, after all. Get up, Chimay ordered. Taishanjun didn't move. Brows furrowed, he sat still, struggling between his own willpower and Chimay's control. Get up! The command intensified. In response to Chimay's vicious tone, Taishanjun finally obeyed. He rose slowly, his robe still loose and open. Chu Wanning's warmth lingered on his unmoving chest. Get out, Chimay said darkly. Taishanjun took a few shuffling steps, then came to a stop. I have it, he said quietly. What? I do have it, he said with the same stiffness. Chimay didn't understand. What do you have? Warmth. Taishanjun slowly reached up to touch his chest, which had been pressed to Chu Wanning's skin. It's warm here. Hello? Hello? Chimay flinched as if stabbed. now furious. Nothing vexed him more than a misbehaving puppet. "Get the fuck out," he snarled. Tae-Shan-jin stepped forward again, but made it scarcely 2 steps before his face twisted. "No," he muttered, clutching his head. Tendons protruded on his hands. He trembled, breathing hard. "This venerable one refuses. How could this venerable one let you?" His eyes were screwed shut. His mind seesawing between focus and confusion, his memories flickering. He struggled again and again, tormented by 2 lifetimes. "Do as you wish." His voice came to a shaking stop. Shimei grunted, pressing a hand to his chest. Tae-Shan-jun, throwing off his control, had unleashed a great wave of energy upon him. He stumbled backward, watching as Tae-Shan-jun's eyes snapped open to reveal his bloodthirsty gaze. There was no hint of helplessness in those eagle eyes, only Shimei's own cool reflection. Bone pale, Shimei said slowly, "I see you're recovering faster these days." Tae-Shan-jun said nothing. His pupils flashed as he reached a hand out, panting shallowly, and summoned Bugui. Shimei lifted his chin, his gaze running up along the blade until it landed on Mo-run's predatory face. "What now? Are you angry? Do you want to kill me?" That pitch-black blade flashed up, coming to a stop with its point against Shimei's snow-white throat. The movement was sharp enough to break skin, leaving a thin trickle of blood. Yet Shimei didn't back down. "Your Majesty," he said scornfully, "my spiritual energy is the only reason you can even move. You'll die if you kill me, as I'm sure you're well aware." Tae-Shan-jun said nothing. "It's true I'm no match for you in terms of power," Shimei continued, "but I advise you to think carefully whether you'd rather live like this or die in your escape." Tae-Shan-jun's hand was steady. After a beat, he withdrew Bugui and turned his face away. Shimei reached up cautiously to touch the blood at his neck. "Fortunately, you're not an idiot." Faced with Tae-Shan-jun's silence, Shimei admonished him, "Don't pull this with me again. You know how things are between us." He glanced at Tae-Shan-jun. "Right now, you're like a rusty blade. I want to make you as useful as you were in the past, and keep using you as my knife. But you probably want to escape my control entirely and kill me." Tae-Shan-jun turned to stare icily at him. "All these years you worked for me in the other world," Shimei continued. "The crack left in the space-time gate is too narrow for frequent travel, so I often sent you letters. But don't forget we also communicated telepathically through the goo flower. Of course I know what you're thinking. Don't be so surprised." Tae-Shan-jun finally spoke. "You seem to be going blind yourself. Where the hell are you looking at that you see... Where the hell are you looking that you see this venerable one surprised?" Shimei pursed his lips in a scowl. "All right. If you understand the pros and cons of our arrangement, then simply endure the situation. We'll work together, and once everything is finished, we'll see if you manage to kill me, or if I obtain an undefeatable weapon." An undefeatable weapon. I'm writing that down. We were talking about Shimei's motives in the book chat today, namely how I couldn't really suss them out outside of the really obvious, he needs Mo-run weaker to do shit and stuff like that. Undefeatable weapon. What is that? And how does Mo-run's shattered core get him closer to that? Like, are we going to try to put Mo-run's soul into Tae-Shan-jun's body? But how would the shot... You know what? Who can say? Meat Bun's smarter than me. Hello. Where am I? "Looking forward to it," said Tae-Shan-jun. A low groan from Chu Wan-ning on the bed silenced both of them. The sound was as soft as a queen of the night flower blooming. But both men stopped their bickering and turned. Wanning, Shizun, the erstwhile Marshall brothers, stared at each other. Taishanjun glowered, then shifted his gaze from Shimei to the sleeping Chu Wanning. He spoke with affected carelessness. He's had a fever for days, and he doesn't seem to be getting better. If it goes on like this, will he... The question died on his lips. Emperor Taishanjun, Butcher of Thousands, stopped short of those final words. His lashes fluttered as his eyes closed. But Shimei didn't care to beat around the bush. Will he what? Are you asking if he's going to die? Perhaps it was a trick of the light. Taishanjun's white face seemed to pale further. He compressed his lips as if the word irritated him. Will he? He asked, carefully avoiding it again. Of course not. You underestimate the Beidou immortal. Aren't you ashamed to ask this question? Shimei arched a brow. Who's responsible for this fever? Weren't you the one who took him like a starving animal? Taishanjun's expression was beyond ugly. He isn't me, he hissed. Don't confuse me with that piece of garbage. Shimei looked him up and down. As it happens, I too think he's a piece of garbage. You know as well as anyone the lengths I've gone to. I tore open a great space-time gate and brought you into this world to destroy that trash and help you return to ascendancy. Your Majesty, he said in a teasing sing-song, we're so very close to our goal. You also want a complete source of power, a powerful spiritual core, do you not? This is getting concerning. He regarded Taishanjun as a hunting snake would, scarlet tongue flickering as he hissed sweet promises. I was also going to say that. Like, Shimei intends to do anything directly for Taishanjun's benefit. Like, he's going to allow Taishanjun to have anything that, like, he wants that doesn't also greatly benefit Shimei. Let's be so fucking honest. He saw the desire in Taishanjun's eyes, so he smiled, going in for the kill. If you want to regain your full potential, behave a little. Venom seemed to shine on his teeth, and his eyes glinted eerily. Our work goes more smoothly when you behave. Taishanjun fell silent, sweeping his sleeves back. Enough. He pointed at Chu Wanning. Let's talk about him first. What about him? He's merely had a shock from his soul returning to his body, said Shimei blandly. There's not much to talk about. If you really want him to feel better, step outside. Taishanjun grew instantly wary. What are you plotting? Shimei smiled. Healing, of course. This venerable one will stay. That won't do, Shimei said. Hanlon the Sage's healing arts are not for outside eyes. At Taishanjun's silence, Shimei continued, but it's fine if you wish to stay. I'll go. After all, Mr. Emperor, you're so very powerful. I'm sure you know how to properly take care of him. Taishanjun's expression twisted into an ugly scowl. His spiritual power was harsh and domineering, completely unsuited to healing. In the past life, he'd had so many servants and doctors, there had been no need for him to learn the art at all. Shimei had wholly recovered his serenity. He watched him, smiling. Taishanjun couldn't stand to look at that smile. I'm not even directly looking at it and I can't stand it. I can only imagine what it's like to be in the same fucking room as this bitch. He turned around, jaw working as he avoided Shimei's eyes. His response came after a long moment. Okay. This venerable one will leave, and you will heal him. He paused, and his voice went sharp. But this venerable one will be right outside. If you dare, the chill in his expression threatened a punishment worse than death. If you dare touch a hair on his head, this venerable one will take your damned life. Shimei let the threat roll off of him. He smiled a little wider and waved Taishanjun out. After hovering at the door for a long beat, Taishanjun at last left the room. Shimei stood in the secret chamber, finally quiet and stared at the stone door he had closed behind him. Then he turned and walked over to that white-clad man. The mocking smile on his face fell away. In its place, a calm yet utterly deranged expression. "Shizun," he cooed. Step by step, he drew nearer. He had Chu Wanning in the palm of his hand. Did it matter that Taishan-jun was outside? There were so many ways he could keep Chu Wanning from making a sound. By the time the Emperor of the Mortal Realm returned, all his fury and cruelty would be futile. He'd have no one to blame but himself for being so useless, so naive, that he'd left his beloved in a nest of snakes for Hanlin to devour. A slender hand drew the canopy aside. Chimay cast a gentle, ravenous gaze down onto the feverish man within. "This time, no one will interrupt us." Lowering himself onto the bed, he caressed Chu Wanning's face. "Come, Consort Chu, let me master you, while your husband waits on the other side of the wall, That's the end of the chapter. Not feeling great. Not feeling great. This isn't good. This isn't great, fam. We're not doing well over here. How we doing? Couldn't be well. Can't be well. You know, we're at the end of the chapter, so I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. Because none of those options turned out to actually be right, which is actually kind of low-key funny, but we can't really dwell on that right now. We're on page 281 for chapter 267, which is called Golden Dragon Jade Pillar. And to be honest, I did not need the chapter to invoke any imagery regarding a pillar right now. Chimay pressed a sacred healing pill between Chu Wanning's lips, then sank his fine-boned fingers into his ink-dark hair like 10 devilish white snakes. Lifting Chu Wanning's head, he pressed their foreheads together. Listen, the forehead moment is sacred. You cannot be violating the forehead moment with this bullshit. That is cruel. Butterfly dreams haunt your slumber each night. Quietly, he began to recite the incantation, but fell silent almost at once. He had intended to erase some of Chu Wanning's memories. This was one of his best-honed skills, which he'd previously used on Mo Run. But perhaps Chu Wanning's souls were in too much disarray. It was entirely ineffectual. Thank God I just practically fucking swallowed my tongue. Because I swear to fucking God, if Chu Wanning had gotten like memory wiped of what was actually going on with Taishan-jun, what the actually got, oh, it wouldn't have been good. Wouldn't have been good for me. This might be rather difficult, Chimay sighed. He closed his eyes, then opened them once more, his sultry gaze now emanating a bewitching glow. He stared fixedly at Chu Wanning, then recited the incantation once more. Butterfly dreams haunt your slumber each night, the past swept away, the present lost in misty mountains. This time it worked, but not perfectly. His spell fell like a boulder into water. There was a splash, but its ripples soon subsided. No matter. A short stretch of time would suffice. When he and Chu Wanning were in the throes of pleasure together, he didn't want Chu Wanning's mind to be full of murderous intent. That wouldn't suit his tastes at all. I think, potentially, what would be, we'll just say worse. than it happening in the way that you would imagine it would happen with a fully cognizant Chuaning. I think the one thing that might be worse is if I had to read a scene in which Chuaning was bewitched to be into it. Shizun, you've been asleep for so long. Isn't it time you woke up? The murmured words had the force of a spell. Chuaning's eyes fluttered open. Shimei's enchantment had done its work. His mind was fogged and stuck in the past life. His awareness reverted to the days shortly after Shimei had passed away. Morun's grief from back then had wounded him so deeply he unconsciously yearned to change the past. His mind naturally drifted back to that period of time. But a person's souls were an intricate thing. Souls from both lifetimes were crowded into Chuaning's body. Despite Shimei's spell, he wasn't quite lucid. His eyes were glassy, as if caught in a waking dream, and his memories were in disarray. He seemed to drift between wakefulness and sleep. Xuming Jing. Shimei's voice was gentle, a tenderness that hid all his twisted desires. It's me. Chuaning seemed exhausted. The fever had drained him. He made a soft noise of acknowledgement, then closed his eyes once more. Shimei knew he was adjusting. He waited, unhurried, by his side. After a time, he heard Chuaning sigh, eyes still closed. I must have been dreaming. I'm so glad you're still alive. His mind was stuck in the time after the heavenly rift. Shimei knew, but he hadn't expected such sorrow from Chuaning. Shimei felt a rare pang. You couldn't bear to see me dead? You're so young, and so well loved, murmured Chuaning. It shouldn't have been you. I'm sorry. Shimei gazed at him quietly. I wish it could have been me. Then no one would grieve, at least. Listen, I've got like 50 pages to get through today, and I can't stop after every 2 goddamn sentences. All right? All right? I'm looking at you, meat bun. I already had to start late today, because Shimei fucked with my audio. The ache in Shimei's chest intensified, throbbing through his deadened heart. He remembered this feeling. He had felt it the first time he and Chuaning had walked home together, sharing an umbrella. And the following years he'd schemed for ages in secret. Those around him either died or drifted away. He had hidden himself in the darkness, pretending to be a heartless boulder. Eventually he convinced himself he'd become stone. It was not until this moment that, after so long, he vividly sensed the existence of his heart. It throbbed, it melted, it ached, it itched. He knew he shouldn't feel these emotions. Acid rain would corrode even stone, and soft moss would cause him to crumble. But he couldn't help grabbing Chuaning's hand, heart pounding. Shimei opened his mouth, swallowing around his dry throat before he asked, Then what about you? If I died, would you grieve? Did you grieve? Chuaning's sharp eyes were half-lidded. Beneath his long and dense lashes, those eyes held too much. Shimei stared into them hungrily, hoping to find some identifiable concrete feeling within, but there was none. Just as how water left alone remained water, and grain left untouched remained grain, only when kept in isolation would a singular emotion stay the way it was. Damn! Write that the fuck down! But human emotions never arose in isolation. Shumei's death had caused Chu Wanning heartache, pain, self-reproach, and regret. All those emotions churned together like water stored with grain, a brew that had long fermented into something else entirely. You know, this is just her with her fucked up paragraph metaphors again. She's done this before. This is just a thing she does. Shizun, Shumei asked with single-minded fixation, if you could do it all over again, would you do for me what you did for him? Would you sacrifice your own life to save mine? Silence. Would you? Chu Wanning's eyes were blank and dull. Ximing Jing. These 3 syllables were all he managed before his lips were brutally sealed. Shumei had awaited this answer so long, but when the moment of truth finally arrived, he dare not hear it. Didn't want to hear it. Yeah, he knew what Chu Wanning would say, Shumei thought. Well, yeah, you know. This is the problem. You know how Chu Wanning feels. You know what his priorities are, and you are about to try to lay waste to like 2 fucking timelines to try to like change a fundamental fact of the universe? Weak indeed. Resentment ricocheted through his heart. He kissed the man on the bed like a punishment. Chu Wanning was too stunned to understand what was happening until Shumei attempted to pry open his mouth with his tongue. Comprehension hit him like a dream shattering, and Chu Wanning's eyes flew open. Shh, quiet, Shumei panted, tapping Chu Wanning's throat to magically muffle his voice. You taught us this spell. You said it would help us stay silent in dangerous situations. Did you imagine there'd come a day I'd use it for this? He didn't stop to take in the confusion and fury in Chu Wanning's eyes. His jealousy and hunger had hushed him past the bounds of rationality. Did you know, Shizun? It's been 2 lifetimes. I've worked so hard, so carefully. I've never had a single day of peace. Well, poor fucking you! Maybe if you got a goddamn hobby and learned to move on from rejection, nobody would be here and you could have had a single day of peace with some poor sod who decided to welcome you into his life. I care a normal amount about this series, really. Very average. He paused to tie Chu Wanning's wrists and ankles to the bed. I'm not a normal person, he said through gritted teeth. Considering what I have to do, I'm not allowed to be a normal person. But what does that matter? Even a puppet like Emperor Taishanjun can do as he likes. Why should I be the only one to deny myself? Okay, first of all, I'm not allowed to be a normal person, considering what I have to do. Like, considering what I have to do, I'm not allowed to be the This is all entirely your choice. She's doing this on purpose. She's doing this on fucking purpose. She has just, at length, illustrated the lack of choice and agency that Mo-Run has had across 2 lifetimes. And so now, the fucking villain of the piece is over here like, oh my god, I have no choice. If only someone would stop me. This is just, oh, it's so terrible being me. I have no agency. Never mind the fact that this is literally all because of you. You could stop. You could go home. Everything is perfectly under your purview and your power and your agency. But he's over here having like woe is me'd his way into a corner with like an open field in front of him. And he's like, oh my god, this corner. Fuck off. Shumei gazed at Chu Wanning struggling furiously beneath him, pain and satisfaction filling his heart. Now I understand. Whether in good times or bad, one must enjoy life to the fullest, Shizun. Fucking puke. He bent over Chu Wanning, yanking Chu Wanning's clothes aside with desperate haste. It's cost me so much to get here. What did I just fucking say? Shouldn't it be my turn to taste you? Think of it as a reward for your disciple, I am going to spontaneously combust. It'll be the first spontaneous combustion ever caught on film, and it will do massive numbers on this site, but I'll be dead! Chu Wanning couldn't summon the strength to fight back. Shimei stripped off his robes with ease. Bathed in the chill air and the haze of the lanterns, the lean, muscular lines of his body were mottled with purple bruises Mo Run had left behind. Shimei's eyes darkened. Really now, he murmured. He did go a bit overboard. He reached out and grasped Chu Wanning's chin, gazing into his phoenix eyes. Chu Wanning's gaze seemed veiled by mist. He was still trapped between dreams and reality, sensing that this was too absurd to be real, yet too vivid to be fake. Combined with the chaos wrought by 2 lifetimes of memories flooding his mind, he couldn't respond. He and I are different. Shimei stared at Chu Wanning. His eyes softened, but within that softness was a hint of something darker. He doesn't know how to make it good for you. Once you've tried me, you'll think no more of him. This time will be different from every other time where Chu Wanning just really hasn't given a shit about you romantically. We gotta work out the tension in our shoulders, man. Not good for us. He began to undress. He'd just bathed and was wearing only the bathrobe. It slithered quietly to the ground to expose a body as exquisite as fine jade. This is exactly why I didn't want any pillar imagery in the chapter title. Because we've heard skin like his described as jade before. Shizin, he whispered, draping his weight over Chu Wanning. Whether it was dream or reality, Chu Wanning could no longer contain his revulsion. He trembled from head to toe, face ashen. You're so warm. Shimei knew the man beneath him would burst into furious castigation if he lifted the silencing spell, yet he couldn't resist caressing him as he breathed. Will you be even hotter inside? Pardon me. Ugh! Shi Mingjing. Shimei blinked in surprise. You broke the spell yourself. He lifted his eyes to stare into Chu Wanning's. Oh, you really are. Repulsed by you? Yeah. Chu Wanning's throat spasmed as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. How dare you, he rasped. Get the fuck away from me. Shimei fell silent, gazing down at the man beneath him. He really was too vicious, too stubborn, too unwilling to accept his fate and admit defeat. There was so much Shimei wanted to say, but none of it passed through his lips. In the end, he just smiled. As Chu Wanning drew breath to snap at him again, Shimei clapped a hand over his mouth. Working quickly, he pulled out his own hair ribbon and tied it between Chu Wanning's teeth. Since you can break the spell, I'll have to use this instead. Sorry, Shizun. The sight of those dazed, wrathful, humiliated eyes inflamed Shimei. He bent to whisper in Chu Wanning's ear, Remember now, you have to stay quiet no matter how good I make you feel. Oh. Your revered emperor is just on the other side of the door. If he hears you begging for me like a slut, do you think he'll be pleased? The only scrap that I'm taking from that sentence is that he has now foolishly, stupidly told Chu Wanning where Taishan is. Shimei dragged his fingertips lower, drawing circles around every blue-black mark. When his touch drifted further down, Chu Wanning felt he had been skewered by humiliation. His memories were a mess, and his awareness was stuck in the past life before he'd discovered Mo Run had fallen victim to a mysterious spell. In this state, he hated Mo Run, but he hated his own shameless heart more. Despite his humiliation, his hatred, and his painful disappointment in Mo Wei-yu, he couldn't help a thrill of pleasure when Mo Run held him, when Mo Run panted in his ear, when sweat dripped from Mo Run's torso onto his bare skin. There were even a few instances, during the most frenzied of their entanglements, when he had sensed his own secret craving for Mo Run to never stop, to tear him apart, to pierce his soul through. It's deeply fucked up, Chu Wanning. Damn. Those tempestuous trysts had given him an illusion of peace. When he lay wrapped in Mo Run's arms, he'd sometimes feel as if none of those terrible things had ever happened, as if this man, who entwined unceasingly with him, might have loved him too. There is art on the other side of this page, and I already resent it. But it wasn't the same with Shimei. He didn't know how he'd fallen into such a strange and vivid nightmare, but when Shimei laid his hands on him, he felt only fury and disgust. His stomach roiled at his touch. He didn't like it in the least. Shimei's body differed from the one in Chu Wanning's memories. He was taller and stronger, yet still fair, with fine features, the lines of his muscles as smooth and elegant as if hewn from frosty jade. Stop calling his skin jade. The scent on his skin was likewise clear and fragrant. It was nothing like the brute power Chu Wanning was used to. Mo Run's body was all he knew. Mo Run's skin might have been pale, but hot blood surged beneath with a terrifying wildness. He radiated a pure masculinity like the blazing sun, capable of scorching the hearts of those it touched. Even though it sometimes smelled like blood, like iron, a hard, cold smell, his sturdy chest pulsed with warmth. Listen, whenever it happens and we're no longer in this fucking hellscape, and we finally get Chu Wanning and Mo Run banging each other without any ifs, ands, or buts about it, any extenuating circumstances, any horrifying context, whenever we get that, because we will get that, or I will legitimately fly to China and find Meat Bun. When we get that, it is going to be the most savage, slutty, messy thing that we have ever fucking seen. And I am personally really looking forward to it. Chu Wanning's eyes snapped open. He twisted his wrists in his bindings, red welts blooming over his skin. Even the ends of his eyes were twin scarlet streaks of humiliation. But fighting was no use, and the thick fur spread on the bed would muffle any sound. Shimei watched him with distant interest as he struggled like a trapped beast. "Why does Shizun waste his energy fighting?" he asked with an amused quirk of his lips. "Don't you believe I'll make you feel good?" He needs to stop saying that. He lifted one of Chu Wanning's strong and slender legs, fitting his own hips between his thighs. His eyes darkened, ready to claim Chu Wanning as he'd dreamed 1,000 times before. Chu Wanning squeezed his eyes shut. He'd already bitten his lip bloody, and his nails were buried deep in his palms. All the muscles, I don't want to see this art. Hate the context, but A long time from now, when I can just fondly, no, not fondly, but when this is all a very distant memory, I'll appreciate this when I can properly divorce it from its context. You'll see what I mean here in a second. What the heck was the start of this sentence? All the muscles in his body were pulled taut, but not because he feared the pain of intrusion. Rather, what he felt was unbearable shame. Whether this was real or an illusion, it was far too humiliating. Actually, here. This is how I'll play it safe. You can get the gist of it. He's not actually uncovered. He's not. He's like fully covered. Because I'm pretty sure Seven Seas just does not put nudity in their books. He's fully covered. I'm just being excessively paranoid because who the hell knows what a stream is going to choose to care about on any given day. So, you get what I mean. If it was an illusion, he was ashamed of himself for dreaming it up. If it was real, he was ashamed of being so incompetent that 2 of his 3 disciples harbored such disgraceful intentions toward him. We hadn't even talked about that yet. He had always been the type to find fault in himself first. We know. If it were just Mo-Run besotted, his desire might have been his own problem, but both Shimei and Mo-Run. Chu Wanning couldn't help wondering if he'd done something wrong or inappropriate, if he'd failed to live up to the role of a teacher, for 2 of his disciples to develop such base urges. Where did he go wrong to suffer so? He waited in tense silence, yet even after some moments, there was no movement from Shimei. Chu Wanning slowly opened his eyes, dark brown pupils flitting up to Shimei, somehow frozen where he was. No hint of lasciviousness remained in his expression. Instead, he looked almost comically aghast. Puzzled, Chu Wanning's gaze drifted downward, whereupon he saw something that truly beggared belief. What was that? That sensual atmosphere vanished without a trace. Chu Wanning felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. Hold, please. Shimei's exposed member was gold. It was so absurd, thank you for acknowledging, Chu Wanning turned his head to keep from giving himself a headache looking at it. But after a few beats, he considered how strange this was. And here's a line for the ages. What kind of person had a golden dick? Truly iconic. Blanching, he forced himself to take another glance, facing the sight head on. This time, he got a good look. It wasn't that Shimei had loins of glittering gold, but rather that a little golden dragon had emerged at some point and coiled itself around Shimei's shaft. It was wrapped very tightly with its head stretched up and out, staring at Ximing Jing in furious silence. The message was clear. It would crush the anatomy in its coils to a pulp, should Shimei make any rash move. Chu Wanning blinked. Shimei stared mutely. The demon dragon bared its teeth at its unlucky victim and opened its tiny jaws in a shrill roar. If not for his bound wrists, Chu Wanning would have put his head in his hands. He seriously couldn't bear to look. At long last, Shimei spat. What the hell is this? The answer came in the form of the stone doors rumbling open, revealing Taishanjin's countenance of displeasure. He strode through the doors with his arms folded over his chest, eyes sweeping over the shining golden dragon coiled around its jade pillar. Ridicule joined the threat in his voice as his thin lips parted in icy comment. Miss, please get off the bed. Furious with humiliation, Shimei didn't immediately take his meaning. Miss, he snarled, who are you talking to? Oh, My bad. Taishan-jun squinted in scrutiny at the appendage within the dragon's coils. It's Mr., after all. You're so small, this venerable one couldn't tell at first. Not the micro jade. That golden dragon's whiskers twitched as it bared its teeth to echo its master. It was perhaps the greatest insult you could give a man. Shimei's vaunted composure wasn't sufficient to keep his face from flushing or the cords in his neck from protruding in rage. Even worse, he was fully undressed and tied up by a fucking miniature dragon, no less. In this state, no display of anger would make him imposing, so he chose silence for a goddamn change. All you had to do was wrap a golden dragon around his dick, and he shuts the fuck up. Emperor Taishan-jun strode into the room, coming to a stop before the bed. Leaning against the bedpost, he pushed his chin out. Huabinan, did you think this venerable one wouldn't know what you were up to as long as you made no sound? He narrowed his eyes, scorn in every line of his handsome face. You do think this venerable one is 3 years old, huh? That might be the most boss thing I've ever fucking heard in my entire life. Given what we now know about why Taishan-jun is the way he is, they really are making fantastic strides in having him become endearing in a very weird way. That's the end of the chapter, by the way. We are after the midpoint. So we're on page 293 for chapter 268, which is called Return to Wushan. And I need a break. I need to unclench and, you know, just breathe a little bit because she had me. She had me. She really had me there. And not even the first half, the first 2/3. She got me. I'm not gonna, you know, I have no ego. She got me. She really did. Once again, the bitch got me. So I'm gonna go breathe for a couple seconds. Let's just everybody breathe. And laugh, maybe, heartily, at Shimei's expense. Now and forever, amen. Truly pathetic in every way, shape, and form. I'll be right back for the second half. And we're back. You know what's funny? Besides everything. Um, they are truly designed to be opposites in every way. Morun, shit ton of spiritual power. Spiritual power for days, weeks, years. Shimei, light on the spiritual power. Pretty weak, actually. And agency. Morun never had a choice, really, in his life about all the things that really mattered. Never had a fucking choice. It's one of his things. Shimei has all the choice in the world. Could not be more under his own power in terms of agency. Morun, absolute fucking unit. Hugest in the land, biggest you've ever seen, will split Chuaning in half. Shimei. Shimei. And just for the record, as we start the next chapter, obviously, as I drop the bookmark, shit, what page did I say we were on? Or just for the record, very obviously, nothing wrong with having a small penis. Absolutely nothing wrong. It is this character and this context that makes it so deeply funny. That's honestly what makes it iconic. It's the metaphor. They're really like doubling down on like everything around Shimei representing a certain thing. And that thing being, in every sense, smallness. We're on page 293 for 268, called Return to Wushan. With a gesture from Taishan-jun, the little dragon tightened its coils. Shimei paled, visibly pained, but his pride wouldn't allow him to drop his facade of calm. Morun, you dare to spy on me? Taishan-jun burst into laughter. You jest. Tell me, what doesn't this venerable one dare to do? Shimei glowered. A quick introduction. This fine fellow is a vessel of the demon dragon of Mount Jiao, Wang Li. It only obeys the command of the Nangong clan. Taishanjun cast him a sly glance. To show such presumption with this venerable one's things in this venerable one's own territory, you must have really grown sick of living. A vein pulsed at Chimei's temple, betraying what was certainly apoplectic rage. He'd never imagined the blood oath with Mount Jiao could be used in this fashion, and he was well and truly caught. He didn't dare push Taishanjun, so he could only retort, "Take this foul thing away." Taishanjun stared openly at the object the dragon was coiled around before scoffing, "Then you'd better make sure you never take that disgusting thing of yours out again." I don't think we'd be able to notice if he did. Already enraged by the interruption, Chimei rumbled darkly, "Who are you calling disgusting?" "Whoever's tied up." Chu Wanning stared. Glancing at the bound Chu Wanning, Taishanjun frowned and tried again. "Whoever's naked." Chu Wanning was still staring. Having stepped in it twice already, Taishanjun waved his hands. "This venerable one doesn't mean you." "Moran, you're ridiculous," Chimei proclaimed. Despite his words, he pulled his robe back on, then looked at Moran again. "Now, will you release it?" "There's no hurry. Leave this room and walk away. Once you reach the back hills, it'll release you on its own," Taishanjun said smugly. "But let this venerable one leave you with one reminder. If you ever think of touching this venerable one's property again, it already knows your scent. Even if you're beyond the bounds of Mount Jiao, it will find you and choke you to death." Having no inhibitions made one unstoppable, and Taishanjun's inhibitions could be counted in the negative. Chimei stormed out in a rage, leaving the Emperor and the Beidou immortal alone in the room. Taishanjun walked over to Chu Wanning and raised a hand. Yet he saw that Chu Wanning's eyes, filled with sharp enmity, also shimmered with tears. Chu Wanning flinched away, no doubt reminded of Taishanjun's violence during those long years as prisoner. Taishanjun sighed inwardly as he brought his hand to Chu Wanning's forehead. Even he wasn't sure where this wisp of softness had come from. "Not so warm anymore," he said expressionlessly. "He might be useless, but his medicines are effective." After a pause, he continued in cold tones, "I won't let that brute humiliate you again. No one is allowed to touch what belongs to this venerable one. You don't need to worry." He had no clue Chimei had erased Chu Wanning's memories, temporarily returning him to the past life, and was thus oblivious to the shock that coursed through Chu Wanning at these words. Moran had called Chimei a brute. Taishanjun didn't notice Chu Wanning's expression. In fact, he'd avoided looking directly at Chu Wanning this entire time. He knew himself too well. If he looked too long at the sight before him, he'd lose control. Didn't I, long time ago, I'm pretty sure I asked this question. I was like, I wonder if we're ever going to uncover, like, the character thing. The psychological urge that Moran and especially Taishanjun has that just loses control at the sight of Chu Wanning. I wonder if we're ever going to unpack that. There was no way Chu Wanning could endure any more rough handling in his current state. In the past, he might not have cared, but he'd been so lonely in that other world for so very long. Unable to commit to either life or death, he was forced into this liminal existence as an incomplete revenant. Seeing Chu Wanning again seemed to have awakened some indistinct warmth in his frozen heart. He wasn't as rash as he used to be. Taishanjun untied Chu Wanning. Upon seeing the red welts on his wrists, he began to unconsciously massage the skin there, then quickly stopped when he realized what he was doing. He really didn't know what was wrong with him. He really didn't. He has no idea. Neither Taishanju nor Mo-run have any. The minutes dripped by. Shime's spell began to weaken, and Chuaning's gaze again grew misty and unfocused. But even amidst the chaotic tangle of his thoughts, he pushed through the pain to speak through bloodless lips. Mo-run. He's back. Whether it was dream or reality was no longer important. All that mattered was that Mo-run's long-held wish had finally come true. So, he rasped, don't feel hatred anymore. Taishanjun stared at him. Perhaps because he thought the dream was about to end, Chu Wanning closed his eyes and extended a hand, chafed raw, to caress Taishanjun's face. Turn back. Something seemed to collapse in Taishanjun's heart. He stared at Chu Wanning, unblinking, confusion obscuring his features like a faint haze of clouds. Chu Wanning furrowed his brow, voice rough with tears. There's no way forward. Turn back. Stop heading down that path. He cupped Taishanjun's face in his palm. 2 lifetimes had left them both in ruins. The Beidou immortal, his awareness flickering between 2 lives, gazed at the corpse of Emperor Taishanjun. Mo-run, he rasped. Why is your face so cold? This would be in his head. It's cold as ice. If I could, I'd be the candle waiting at the fork in your winter road. They invented a whole new circle of hell for Meatbun to burn in for that line. I'd burn my entire life up to light your way home. Why are you so cold? I don't know how long I can burn for you. What if my life is exhausted? What if I burn out? What if my flame is extinguished, but you're still walking into the darkness, refusing to turn back? What would I do then? Chu Wanning's fingers trembled. He closed his eyes. He'd ever been solitary in life, without friends or kin, and he didn't fear death. But what if he burned through all his remaining warmth, yet failed to thaw Mo-run's frozen heart? The idea roused a gnawing guilt. What if his flame were to go out, and that youth wanted to turn over a new leaf after, only to find himself unable to retrace his steps? The thought of it made him yearn to live on, even for just one more day. Maybe tomorrow the ice would melt, and that man would turn around, walking out of the endless darkness into the light. That's a scene break. Mo-run just wants to walk into the light of goodness. Chu Wanning just wants to guide Mo-run to the light of fucking goodness. So why can't these 2 guys just go off into the light of goodness? Also, the ship dynamic that includes one person either being or believing themselves to be, or both, irredeemable, and the other one never failing to believe in the other's potential for redemption. Catnip to me. Absolutely 100%. Made for me. I ship Thor and Loki for a reason. A few reasons. And that's certainly one of them. So she's taken aim at me specifically here. Where even? I have no idea. Scene break. It should be obvious. After the damage done by Shumei's spell and the turbulence of gaining 2 lifetimes worth of memories, Chu Wanning spent the majority of the following day sleeping. When he briefly woke, his mind was muddled, and his sense of reality was scattered and incomplete. Once Taishanjun understood the reason behind it, he found Chu Wanning's confusion saved him a good deal of trouble. Chu Wanning was bewildered and easily placated. If Taishanjun was too harsh one day, it was likely Chu Wanning wouldn't remember any of it the next time he opened his eyes. Because his memories were such a jumble, Chu Wanning always thought he was dreaming and thus let down his guard much more often. A cat that scratched was interesting in its own way, but a big white cat snoozing in a soft, sweet ball was a rare sight indeed. He had to give it to Huabinan. It was well done. Every day, Taishanjun asked Chu Wanning the same question first thing in the morning. What do you remember today? And every day, Chu Wanning would frown and ask, What? Are your memories still stuck after our wedding in the past life? Taishanjun would reply with uncharacteristic patience. Or are they at some other time now? At this point, Chu Wanning would probably say curtly, with a look of displeasure, Moeyu, what nonsense do you speak now? In the past life, Taishanjun would have slapped him for his impudence. Now, Taishanjun also raised a hand, but his movement slowed as he approached Chu Wanning's face, and his other hand followed. It didn't look like a slap at all. Rather, he seemed to be cupping the other man's cheeks. He chuckled, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. Perfect. It'd be best if we could keep you like this. He didn't want Chu Wanning to remember what had happened in his current life, or to remember the Mo Weiyu who'd become a Zongsha. If Chu Wanning stayed in this state of befuddlement, it would be as though they had returned to Wushan Palace. They could spend their days and nights entwined no matter how much Chu Wanning hated him. His Shizun, his Wanning, would again be his and his alone. Jealous of your own damn self, mocked Huabinan. You're prettier than a woman. Jealous, thought Taishanjun. Impossible. Anyone would grow accustomed to something that was around all the time, even if it was a dog or some random object, that was all. On one particularly sunny day on Mount Jiao, Taishanjun hauled Chu Wanning outside to sit with him beneath a flowering tangerine tree. He lifted his eyes to those little white flowers dotting the branches and sighed lazily. Too bad they're not more fragrant. If only it were Hai-Tung. Chu Wanning still thought he was asleep. How are you so picky, even in dreams? Aside from just seeing Chu Wanning again after so many years of Chu Wanning being, dead to Taishanjun, is there any other factor that I'm just missing that would soften Taishanjun? Like, am I wrong, or does he, not have his heart anymore? I don't know where I'm pulling that from, but somebody confirm or deny, please. Taishanjun rolled over on the grass, then shifted to rest his head on Chu Wanning's knee. Ah, thank you, Blue. He has his heart. He's just dead. I do not know where the no heart thing came from. Taishanjun rolled over on the grass, then shifted to rest his head on Chu Wanning's knee. They looked at each other, and Taishanjun spoke. This venerable one's always been like this. By the way, this venerable one is hungry. When we go back, make a bowl of congee for me. Egg drop pork congee, but the egg can't be overcooked and the porridge shouldn't be too thick. A little bit of pork will suffice. You know how to make it, right? This venerable one's taught you how many times. Chu Wanning had no intention of complying, but between Taisha and Jun's hauling him bodily toward the kitchen and his unceasing verbal cajoling, he was left with no other choice. Eventually, he followed Taisha and Jun into the ancestral hall. The fire in the kitchen was readied, the rice was washed, and the water was warming up. Taisha and Jun sat at the little table, chin resting on his hand as he watched Chu Wanning work at the stove, stewing in helpless irritation. Thankfully, Chu Wanning felt this was a dream and hadn't put too much effort into his resistance. As for Taisha and Jun, he knew this illusion would soon shatter, and so cherished it all the more. The pot came to a boil, and the aroma of rice and meat wafted up from beneath the wooden lid. Taisha and Jun folded his fingers beneath his chin. There was much he wanted to say to Chu Wanning, but there was no real point in voicing it. Nothing would change if he did. In the end, his lips parted, but the only word that came out was an indolent, "Oi." Huh. What was he going to say? Taisha and Jun didn't know. After some thought, he said solemnly, "Remember to add salt." Henry, thank you. No more flour after Chu Wanning died. Maybe that's where the no heart thing came from. I thought I remembered the flour no longer being as effective. I did. Then remember to taste it. Chu Wanning stared at him. There was a glint of relaxed mischief in Taisha and Jun's eyes, so dark they looked purple. Don't think of poisoning this venerable one with salt. He came up behind Chu Wanning and glanced down into the pot. Without warning, he folded the man's warm figure into his arms. He nuzzled at Chu Wanning's temple, eyes drifting shut. This venerable one still wants to torment you for the rest of your life. Moe-you. Feeling Chu Wanning tense in his embrace, Taisha and Jun held him tighter. He couldn't resist dropping a kiss on the nape of his neck, lashes fluttering. What? This venerable one spent so much time teaching you the art of porridge, yet you won't make this venerable one a single bowl. This coarse logic reduced Chu Wanning to silence. With great effort, he dredged up some appropriately biting retorts. Yet as soon as he tried to speak, his lips were soundly sealed against Taisha and Jun's own. When he held that flame, once lost and now regained, Taisha and Jun returned to the warmth of the human world. Amidst the unremarkable sense of domestic life, this dead man walking kissed Chu Wanning freely and passionately. His freezing lips pressed to Chu Wanning's warm ones. His Shizin, his Wanning, his consort Chu. No one could take him away, and he would never give him up. Taisha and Jun deepened the kiss, head beginning to spin as he pinned Chu Wanning against the table. He claimed Chu Wanning's swollen lips with abandon as his other hand reached up to slide off his clothes. He'd often done things like this in the past. When he was in this kind of mood, he didn't care even if there were urgent petitioners outside. The wildest instance was one in which desire had seized him in the middle of the day, and he had indulged himself with the newly titled court consort Chu right in the council hall of Wushan Palace. Monks from Wubei Temple had come to bring his attention to the matter of the drought demon of the Yellow River and had constantly begged an audience. In irritation, Taisha and Jun ordered the veil to be lowered to conceal them from view and allowed the monks inside. Past that gauzy canopy and its tinkling bed veil, he continued ravishing his own shizun on the lounge of patterned red sandalwood. Keep it down. I told them I summoned Consort Chu to save you some dignity, he panted atop Chu Wanning. Make any noise and those bald donkeys will know you're the one in my bed. Moe-you. The eyes of the man beneath him were scarlet with shame. You bastard. Taisha and Jun snapped his hips harder in response, filth spilling from his lips. Baby, that part of you down there is so hot and wet. So why is this part of you up here so bitchy? Hold back your moans, that's all. When those oblivious monks came in, they beheld through the pale yellow gauze a blurred vision of Taishanjun's broad back, accompanied by a pair of willowy legs, weakly splayed and quivering with each of Taishanjun's brutal thrusts. Those toes were pale and delicate, trembling like dew-laden lilies of the valley. The monk's entreaties dissolved into incoherence. Not that Mo-Run absorbed much of it anyway. All he retained was the sight of Chu-Wan-Ning pushed to his limits, yet refusing to make a sound, tears streaming from reddened eyes. His body writhed, bucking as Taishanjun fucked him to climax, body taut in suffering and suppressed pleasure, biting his lip bloody to remain silent. It was too fucking arousing. The instant the monks left, Taishanjun could no longer restrain himself. Hoisting one of Chu-Wan-Ning's limp legs up on his shoulder, he fucked him viciously from this new angle. "Wan-Ning, you can let it out now. They're gone." But Chu-Wan-Ning was delirious. His only thought was that he must keep quiet. Taishanjun leaned forward to capture his bloodied lips, swallowing the taste of copper. "They're gone." He flipped Chu-Wan-Ning over, pushing him into the lounge and hammering deep into his slick hole. We know how I feel about that word. Without letting up for an instant, Taishanjun reached around to grope at the smooth, firm planes of Chu-Wan-Ning's lean chest, throat bobbing as he gasped in the midst of feverish desire. "You gonna come for me?" Damp strands of hair tangled over Chu-Wan-Ning's eyes. Half his handsome face was covered by the mess they'd made of the cushions. Mo-Run's cock was simply too big. In contrast, with each thrust, Chu-Wan-Ning felt his belly was going to be pierced through. He panted, lips parted, fingers fisted tight in the cloth. The man behind him increased his pace, almost frenzied, until he finally came, burying himself to the hilt. Mo-Run knew where Chu-Wan-Ning was most sensitive, knew where to aim, so each pulse of his, thick, creamy, didn't need that word in this context, release would hit right where it would make Chu-Wan-Ning shudder, make his scalp prickle, make him squeeze his eyes shut and moan. Even then, Mo-Run was just getting started. It didn't take long for him to harden again, still buried deep inside the man trapped beneath him. Mo-Run flipped Chu-Wan-Ning over and stared at him, gazed dark through his own tangled hair, his eyes tracing a heated path over the expanse of his skin from his wet and hazy eyes to his bruised and bitten mouth. Lower, lower, until Mo-Run dove down and took one of Chu-Wan-Ning's nipples into his mouth. Exhausted from their love-making, Chu-Wan-Ning let out a startled cry as one of his legs was raised up again, only to choke, gasping for breath at that scalding heat pressed into him once more. He shook his head and, unable to bear the sound of his own coarse moans, bit down on his own hand. Even then, the sounds of their filthy union couldn't be muffled. The frantic pace of their love-making had churned Mo-Run's seed within him into a sticky mess between his legs, the brisk slap of flesh on flesh, lewd and wet, shattering the light in his eyes into glittering shards. "Let go. Stop biting yourself." Of course, Chu-Wan-Ning ignored him. He kept his teeth firmly set in his wrist, refusing to make a sound. Cursing under his breath, Mo-Run braced himself against the lounge with one hand and grabbed Chu-Wan-Ning's arm with the other, pulling him almost off the couch. "Hold on to me." "What?" Before Chu-Wan-Ning could react, Mo-Run scooped him bodily from the lounge and stood, driving Mo-Run's cock deeper as the weight of Chu-Wan-Ning's body sank to meet him. Smiling softly, Mo-Run kissed him again. "You're not so heavy after all." Still holding him, he walked toward the inner hall. All of this brought into a complex context, to say the least, given that we now know what the hell was fueling Taishanjun all this time. But that swollen length was still buried deep inside his shizun. Whether purposeful or not, in this position, every step made Mo-Run's hot cock head sheathed inside Chu-Wan-Ning press against his most sensitive spot. Every brush against it made his toes curl, yet he still childishly refused to speak or moan. He merely stared, black eyes fierce, at the disciple holding him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Mo-Run chuckled, coming to a stop and grinding upward. "You want this?" Chu-Wan-Ning flinched. It was humiliating, but his body had long grown sensitive to Mo-Run's ministrations. Chu-Wan-Ning's brows knit together, gasping softly as his cheeks flushed red. He could vividly feel the wetness dripping from where they were joined. Each of Mo-Run's movements made an increasingly bigger mess of them both. Mo-Run fucked him like this for a while before growing impatient. He looked, eyes shadowed toward the black hall he had been making for. Irritated at its distance, he pinned Chuaning down right on the icy floor of the great hall, where court was held every morning. He couldn't wait any longer. The wet heat he was buried in felt so good. He shoved Chuaning down onto the stone, driving into him without mercy. In these wild moments, Chuaning felt as if his soul was leaving his body. Not even he could remain lucid amidst the current of this torrential entanglement. His legs dangled loose around Mo-Run's tight waist, and his body shook with every sharp movement of Mo-Run's hips. There were times when he felt he would die, that Mo-Run wanted to kill him, just like this. Wushan Palace itself seemed to take on a wanton, disheveled appearance. The solemn imperial court was empty save for this pair of naked adversaries. Mo-Run panted raggedly, sweat trickling down the taut lines of his abdomen. He clutched his pleasure-drunk Shizun tightly, driving in quick and hard from below. He heard Chuaning's low and suppressed murmurs and snatches of helpless whines. Wanning. He captured Chuaning's parted lips in another feverish kiss. Exertion had left the veins on Mo-Run's neck bulging, his body as searing as his gaze. He nuzzled against Chuaning, their limbs tangling on the floor. Amidst this lingering kiss and his punishing thrusts, Mo-Run pushed Chuaning hard against the stone, covering his mouth and nose with one hand and leaving only those glassy eyes visible. He pumped twice more, then sank to his full depth inside Chuaning, toes going white with strain. I'm gonna come, Waning, here. Chuaning had been driven to the edge of insanity by Mo-Run's monstrous strength and vitality. Another thing Mo-Run has that Shimei does not. Mo-Run, picture of overflowing masculinity. Shimei, not so much. His hands fell limp to the ice-cold stone. His limbs sprawled, wide and pliant, around Mo-Run as his body shook from mingled thrill and torment. Mo-Run huffed, voice hoarse and eyes dark. He grabbed Chuaning's face and turned it toward him. Here, The full head of him was pressed right against that deepest bundle of nerves in Chuaning's body. The merest touch made Chuaning's eyes fly open, revealing the humiliated flush at their corners. He shook beneath Mo-Run, but was held in place by firm hands. Mo-Run breathed roughly into his ear. Stop moving, baby, I'm close. He groaned when his climax took him. That thick wetness flooded once more into the depths of Chuaning's overstimulated body. Chuaning spasmed as if struck by lightning, eyes closed in rapture. Waning, does it feel good? Am I making you feel good? At such time, Chuaning could scarcely string two words together. Both scolding and rebuke were absent. His rational mind had fled long ago. His fine legs spread wide, his stomach filled with his own disciples' cum. Later, they had done such things often, on the great hall's throne, or the stairs, or against the wall. Taishanjun's animal ferocity was a tameless, almost destructive force. When consensual sex like this was all-consuming, despite the retaliatory and humiliating nature of the acts, it was mind-blowingly good. In the present moment, in the depths of Mount Jiao, Taishanjun stared into Chuaning's gaunt face. As he silently recalled those scenes, a perverse curiosity rose in his mind. Had Chuaning ever wondered why Song Chutong had never conceived, despite Mo-Run's prodigious appetites? He'd favored the woman at one point, but never found her quite to his taste. He wanted no children off Song Chutong. Even in the throes of pleasure, he retained enough clarity to restrain himself. He never came inside her, ensuring she would bear no progeny of his. Perhaps as a result of the circumstances of his own birth, he felt that two people, unless they loved each other enough to spend a lifetime together, shouldn't beget any children. But it was strange. He hated Chuaning so bitterly. Yet he often thought that it would be welcome if his consort Chu fell pregnant from the frequency of his visits. Was this his desire to dominate, to retaliate, to take possession? Did he crave this because it would be a punishment even more humiliating than physical disgrace? He didn't know. In his ignorance, he dragged Chuaning down again and again into the abyss of sin and desire. The way it all makes too much fucking sense. Like, a key example. That's the end of the chapter. A key example of how the reread of this has to be absolutely fucking murder. Because it just makes too much sense. The way it's on the page, the ferocity, the outlandish, heightened, behind a gauze curtain, like down the hall, like the incessant, it all makes too much sense. God. We're on page 307 for chapter 269. Which is called Never Leave Me. It's got to be what? Like 2 pages? No, it's a few pages. Okay, never mind. It's called Never Leave Me. We're gonna end with Chu Wan-ing having to like leave in some respect. And then I'm gonna feel bad for Tae-shen Jin. Because it was arguably, technically, just as much against his will as it was Chu Wan-ing. Dizzy with lust, Tae-shen Jun yanked off Chu Wan-ing's belt sash. His robes fell away from his shoulders, revealing the bruises beneath. Tae-shen Jun froze, his eyes dark yet searing, like 2 glowing embers in the ashes. After a stiff pause, he closed his eyes and sighed. Forget it. He would likely break Chu Wan-ing in half if he took him again right now. I'll let you off easy today. There was an almost otherworldly silence in the kitchen as he released the man in his arms and refrained from taking any further liberties. Yet Tae-shen Jun couldn't resist leaning forward, swallowing hard as he kissed his lover's brows and eyes, trailing his lips down to the base of his neck, where he sank his teeth into flesh. Only then did he rise, yanking the man he'd shoved against the table up along with him. The congee was ready, bubbling in its pot. Tae-shen Jun fixed Chu Wan-ing's clothes with a rough hand and cleared his throat, voice still husky and warm. It's ready. Serve me a bowl. The sheer and utter goddamn contrast of a Tae-shen Jun whose heart, dead as it is healing, versus the reminder of what Tae-shen Jun was capable of when, you know, at the mercy of a fucking flower. His behavior baffled Chu Wan-ing, but the Emperor's moods were often inscrutable, and Chu Wan-ing still thought he was dreaming, so he didn't ponder it deeply. In any case, having a proper meal was much more comfortable than being bent over the table to satisfy Tae-shen Jun's lust. Thus he opted to remain silent as he reached for the wooden lid. Oh, more art! Wait, hang on. I was distracted by the art. Wooden lid. A big bowl. Trying to stuff yourself to death. The ghost of a smile flitted across Tae-shen Jun's face. We'll see. He sat down at the table. He had a strong urge to step up to the stove and see what kind of damage Chu Wan-ing had done to the congee, but he had to keep up imperial appearances. Tae-shen Jun sat with appropriate poise, affecting an expression of refined disinterest. When the bowl arrived before him on the table, however, Tae-shen Jun could no longer maintain his aloofness. It was both overcooked and watery. He didn't need to taste it to know the flavor was certain to be off as well, that terrible, familiar flavor that was forever beyond his reach. Eat, said Chu Wan-ing. Tae-shen Jun stared at the little bowl for a very long time, stirring it without bringing the spoon to his mouth. Chu Wan-ing glanced at him. It'll get cold if you don't eat it soon. Oh. He lifted the spoon to his lips, but after a moment's hesitation, he set it back down. Chu Wan-ing finally seemed to take notice of his strange behavior. What's wrong? Nothing, replied Tae-shen Jun. He flashed a grin, devilish and disdainful. It's so bad, I don't want it anymore. Chu Wanning stared at him. It's too stuffy in here. This venerable one is going to get some air. He pushed the bowl away and rose to leave. You know, just two guys sitting down to food. A rather deliberate shadow play going on against the wall. That's deeply fucking rude. The artists should be ashamed of themselves. He was nearly at the door when Chu Wanning's voice rang out behind him. If you don't eat it, Chu Wanning said with a tranquility born of enduring the same humiliation countless times, I'll dump the pot. Most of what he made for Taishan-jun ended up wasted. It had been the same since that first bowl of wontons was flung to the ground. Taishan-jun whirled back around. Don't touch it! He cleared his throat in an attempt to hide his anxiety. Leave it for now. What for? None of your business. Taishan-jun lifted the door drapes and left the room. When he was safely beneath the eaves, he closed his eyes and heaved a gusty sigh. He was a corpse. No matter how greatly he resembled a living person, he wasn't one. He'd long since lost the ability to eat food. After he'd killed himself at Wushan Palace, he was raised as a revenant by Hanlin the Sage. The sage had subsequently escaped to this world through the rift, but Taishan-jun had been left in that tattered old universe to carry out his commands for nearly 10 years. In that decade of living as one of the dead, he hadn't eaten a thing. He'd never been a glutton for food, so he'd felt no regret, until today, when that dreadful bowl of egg and pork congee was placed before him. Only then did he feel the pang of his loss. Why couldn't he still be alive? He'd waited so many years for this day, for a Chu Wanning who belonged to him alone. Now he couldn't even eat the congee Chu Wanning made for him. What did Chu Wanning's congee taste like? Taishan-jun stood beneath the eaves with his eyes closed, trying to remember. After a long moment, he jerked up an arm to cover his eyes. No one could see the expression on his face. All that was visible were his pale, pursed lips and the clean lines of his jaw. He lowered his arm and opened red-rimmed eyes. His memory was poor, and he'd never been clever. If he could still taste, perhaps he could have recalled those memories, but his blood had cooled and his tongue was deadened. Even with the bowl of congee right before him, he couldn't remember what it tasted like. Now he'd never know. That's another scene break. Late that night, Taishan-jun went to look for Shimei. By the cold pond before the ancestral temple, that peerlessly beautiful man stood with his pale feet bare, splashing in the cold water and sending up glittering droplets of light. Shimei arched a brow at the sight of him. It's a beautiful day, he said mockingly. Yet instead of staying in the chamber with Chuzangsha, your Majesty has found the time to seek me out. Taishan-jun didn't bother with niceties. Are you able to make this venerable one alive for a little while? Shimei looked him up and down. Your status as a revenant shouldn't affect matters of the bedroom. That's not what I'm talking about. Then what are you talking about? Eating, Taishan-jun said stiffly. This venerable one wishes to eat. Shimei's eyes darkened. Your Majesty can't possibly want to eat those wontons, he asked thoughtfully. No one makes wontons as good as my shiga. Shimei smiled. There's a new one. To think you remember his existence today. Taishan-jun's recollections of Shimei had been scrambled beyond recognition. Sometimes he had memory of the man, but most times he had no idea who he was. This mention of his shiga today caught Shimei's attention. Ah, but you spend all your time entangled with Chu Wanning on Mount Jiao. Don't you ever spare a single thought for your Mingjing Shixiang? Perhaps this was what they meant by together, yet strangers still. It took Taishun a moment to respond. You said this venerable one's body has too much yin energy, and that I shouldn't go find my Shiga before fully reviving with a new spiritual core. He's a water elemental cultivator. This venerable one would hurt him badly. Shimei lied without blinking. Indeed. So why did you bring up wontons? Taishun glared. Don't you have any tact? No. Shimei really doesn't have anything. Anything at all. Shimei smiled. I was just wondering, other than wontons, what food would make the Emperor Taishun, connoisseur of 1,000 delicacies, crave it so? Taishun fell silent. What, you don't want to say? Then let me guess. Chuzongsho cooked it for you. Shimei found his answer in Taishun's expression. I heard Chuzongsho of Xishang Peak is a master in the kitchen, he said with a smile. Capable of cooking the greatest charcoal. How curious that you'd eat it so happily. You don't fucking get it, Shimei. You really don't. You get nothing. Ever. This last cast a pall over Taishun's already grim expression. Just tell me if you can do it. Stop wasting my time. Of course there's a way, but I've already told you what it was. Taishun frowned. What? The same old thing, Shimei said gently. The sooner we take Muzongsho's spiritual core, the sooner you'll return to life. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. A tangerine blossom floated on the surface of the water. Shimei tapped it with his foot, catching the pristine blossom between his toes. Its petals were alabaster pale, yet not even the flower could compare with the fair translucence of Shimei's skin. Shimei looked smilingly down at the little bloom. The sooner we work together to obtain that spiritual core and put it in you, the sooner I'll have access to your full strength. And the sooner you can eat whatever you want. He paused, looking up through soft lashes. Then you can finally see the one you long for. Faced with Taishun's silence, Shimei concluded, So I suggest you cooperate, Your Majesty. You asked this venerable one to massacre those cultivators at Guyueya, then made me summon an army of Zhenlong pawns to take down Xishang Peak. This venerable one did it all. What else do you need from me? Just say it. Shimei rubbed his hands together. How refreshing. There's really not much more for you to do, save for one last thing. Tell me. Come with me to Tianyun Pavilion. The board is set for our final move. It's time to finish things. Only then did Taishun notice the golden feathered pigeon perched on a branch behind Shimei, one of the messenger birds used by Tianyun Pavilion. Tianyun Pavilion contacted you. They did. Shimei extended 2 slender fingers, a thin sheet of paper trapped between. All good news. Everything's gone according to plan. It's difficult indeed to play the hero. Mo Zongshe offered up his spiritual core to protect the cultivation realm, but no one's lightened his sentence because of it. For reasons passing full goddamn understanding. He smiled. With a flourish of his fingers, the letter folded itself into a paper butterfly and flew toward Taishun. See for yourself. There was no need. Taishun caught the butterfly but didn't unfold it. He stared dark-eyed at Shimei. Just tell me when we start. The interrogation is in 3 days. Sentencing in another 3. 6 days? Shimei caressed the golden pigeon's wing. His countenance smiled. In a blink, a snake's triangular head darted from his sleeve. The animal sank its fangs into the bird's neck and swallowed the docile bird whole. It happened so quickly. Nothing changed in Shimei's face, as if this was all entirely ordinary. He smiled and brushed an errant feather aside. Exactly. We'll stay another 3 days on Mount Jiao, then go to Tianyun Pavilion to wait. The feather drifted into the water. Ripples spread around it, destroying the reflection of the 2 men on the shore. His spiritual core will make you unstoppable. Everything you want will be in your grasp. I just don't believe anything he says. Deep in thought, Taishanjun returned to the secret chamber. Chu Wanning was already slumbering. It seemed he'd been reading, but had lapsed into exhausted sleep over the desk, his pristine white robes falling around him like a bank of fresh snow. Taishanjun stood beside him and watched him in silence. One man, one lamp, and one book. He'd seen all the glories the world had to offer, beauties of every color and kind, and scenes of untold splendor. It's only Chu Wanning. What's there to look at? He asked himself, vexed. But he still swallowed, impelled to lean down and take hold of this man, burying his face into the warm crook of his neck. Chu Wanning stirred awake. Those phoenix eyes were mild and confused, yet when he remembered the cruelty of Emperor Taishanjun before him, his gaze sharpened and chilled. Taishanjun watched the change, and the dissatisfaction and frustration in his heart multiplied like weeds. He couldn't stop himself from picking Chu Wanning up. What madness are you? The breath went out of Chu Wanning as he was shoved against the wall. Taishanjun kissed him with passion and despair, lips roving from his neck to his mouth, and from his mouth down to his jaw. Panting, he asked, "Do you love me?" Receiving no reply, he tried again. "Chu Wanning, do you love me?" "What are you doing? Why are you—" But Taishanjun didn't seem to want to hear his answer. He simply wanted to ask. He didn't care what the truth might be. Or maybe the answer didn't matter. The road was long and there was no turning back. No answer he could give would change a thing. The absolute nerve to draw a parallel like this between him and exactly the passage that we read about Shimei earlier. Yes, chat, thank you. Somebody let this man answer a question. If I weren't Emperor Taishanjun, if I became a Zongsha like you, would you choose to be with me? Would you be kinder to me? He bit down on the nape of Chu Wanning's neck, lapping at the broken skin as if he would drink his blood. As if this was the only way he could prove that the man in his arms belonged to him, and not to the Mo Wei-yu who was different from him in every way. He lowered his lashes, and his voice went hoarse. At the end of it all, do you still like the person he is more than the person I am? Mo Wei-yu, what the hell are you talking about? Chu Wanning's memories were a mess. He only remembered the past life, not the present, so of course he couldn't understand his raving. This was the only time he could belong to Emperor Taishanjun alone. Taishanjun suddenly felt a terrible sadness. A bitter edge crept into the haughtiness in his voice. He nuzzled his lover and at last quietly asked, I have run out of water. Oh, wow, really? I only looked away. Maybe it's because I'm in such distress. Where the fuck am I? Thank you. If I took his spiritual core, would you hate me even more? There was nothing one could change less than insecurity. Taishanjun held Chu Wanning tight in his arms. But you belonged to this venerable one first. Don't betray me. Misery engulfed him. Perhaps a long loneliness would dull even the sharpest blade. It's been 8 years. Every moment he had you, I waited alone in another world. Alone in Wushan Palace, with no one at his side. Don't leave me again. The first time, I at least had the ability to end things myself. But if you leave me a second time, I can't even choose to die. Taishanjun furrowed his brow. Darkness, madness, heartache, and obsession written in every line of his pale face. I can't bear it. Not this time. What the fuck? Well, that's the end of volume 8. There is evidently something about the author page at the very end. Hang on. Hang on. Hold, please. Oh, yeah. And about the author. Notable works. Something is crossed out. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. But there's about the author, which is about, obviously, Meat Bun. And then in the notable works thing, there's something that's still marked out that's like 2019 winner of the Ghost Realms annual Fushi roasting writing contest. And then there's 20 years on the Forbes Cultivation World's billionaires ranking and still going strong. A biography of Zheng Shi. Stop. No, it's still crossed out. There is, however, a title that says The Husky and His White Catch is in, with dumb being handwritten in, but not how it originally appears. And it says also being sold in another world. And others to come. Please look forward to them. Absolutely. Fuck you, Meat Bun. Fuck you, Meat Bun. Jeez. I hadn't noticed that like less stuff is crossed out with each volume. I hadn't noticed this. I hadn't clocked this. So then the latest one to be uncovered would be He Who Failed as a People's Teacher. Huh. No longer available for sale due to complaints filed by Yuheng Elder Chu Waning. Wow. Cruel and unusual. Cruel and unusual she is. Jesus. Okay. Well. They have got me feeling some type of way about Taishanjin. Like, now granted, this is what the hang on, let me count. Guardian, Motozushi, obviously, and Heaven Official's Blessing, and Saving System. So Erha would make the fifth danmei I've read. I have not encountered a situation like Taishanjin kind of ever in fiction. So, genuine question. Has anyone who like reads danmei on the regular, has anyone encountered anything like Taishanjin before? Because this is quite a unique fictional circumstance that I seem to be finding. This is doing something else entirely. I don't even know how the hell she got there. And then, of course, there's the fact that she just gave Taishanjin and Chu Waning a sort of opportunity to sort of recreate Wushan Palace and like have another go around, really. Now that we know everything, she gave us an opportunity to have them in a Wushan Palace of sorts for a variety of really mean narrative reasons. And so now, in either volumes 9, 10, or 11, we're gonna have to see like Taishanjin, I don't know, die a second time, heal so much that he doesn't want to take Morun's core because of how it would affect Chu Waning, something like that. we're going to metaphorically and literally close the book on Taishan Jun at some point, and it's going to be sad. Deeply fucking sad. In some kind of sacrifice on behalf of Chuaning, in some way, shape, or form, it's gonna be fucking sad. Because his entire personhood got co-opted out of jealousy and microjade. So, that's it for Volume 8. We are immediately jumping into Volume 9, which means that Thursday at 3 p.m., we're starting Volume 9. So at least we don't have to wait that long. At least it's just a couple of days. That's much better than it has been in the past. There's no break, there's no anything. We're reading Volume 9, and then there's a break. So however the hell Volume 9 ends is where we get to sit. For a few months. I actually checked my schedule. I come back to Erha for Volume 10 late February. And so we'll sit there for the last part of November, and then December, and then January. It'll basically be 3 months and some change, which is actually pretty devastating now that I say that out loud. So I'm just going to go and enjoy the fact that we get to come back on Thursday. Thank you so much for joining me as we end yet another volume of Erha, and it does yet more damage to my entire soul. We'll be talking about the end of this volume on Thursday at 2:15 with YouTube members and patrons before we start Volume 9. And oh dear God, I can't even imagine. The book chat today was like really on it with the observations. So if they bring that energy to Thursday, it's not going to go well for me. So I'll see you on Thursday. And Jesus Christ, go do something nice and light and fluffy, or hug something, or cuddle something. And have a lovely week. And I'll see you on Thursday. Please, for the love of God, take care of yourself.